Hello and welcome to DBD School 101. The purpose of this video is to supplement the in-game tutorial. So if you haven't finished the tutorial yet, I strongly encourage you to pause this video, go complete the tutorials, and then come back. You will get 200,000 blood points, which we'll talk about in future videos, which will help you to level up your characters and get better add-ons, items, perks, etc. All of that is outside of the scope of this video, which is just meant to supplement that tutorial. So this video is for those of you who've just finished the tutorial and are ready to learn a little bit more as you're starting to get your feet wet with this game, which has so much information to learn about it. So let's dive right in. I have my Bunny Legion here, and I just made a video of clips with me and some of my friends. Huge thank you to everyone who helped make this video. So we're gonna start first by talking about vault speeds, which is the windows or the pallets. You can actually go over those at 3 different speeds. So that speed that she just went over is a slow vault, and she's gonna come back over the vault the same speed. Notice there's not really a lot of sound involved with that. You can hear her make a little bit of a grunt, but there's no big sound notification that the killer is going to get. So I want this to be from both perspectives. So you're going to see a lot of killer perspective, a lot of survivor perspective. I do encourage you to play both. There's a lot to learn on both sides. And right now I'm going to show you how the killer gets notified of your location if you're a survivor, and as a killer, how to locate survivors more easily and what kinds of things to be on the lookout for and what they really mean and what they could be if you see these sound notifications that pop up on your screen. So if a survivor does a slow vault, there is no sound notification involved with the killer. Unless the killer sees you do it, they probably don't really know that that just happened. Now you can do a medium vault, which means you're holding your running button while you vault, but it's not the fastest speed. It's an in-between. We call that a medium vault, and she's going to demonstrate that here. So do you hear that, like, I don't know the best way to describe that, but that sound, that like banging sound, that means that the killer did receive a sound notification. And if I wasn't standing here right now looking at this adorable bunny Fang, I would be aware that she had just medium vaulted. And it makes the same sound when you sprint vault, but you get through the window much quicker. So if I am right here and if I was chasing her, she wouldn't want to do a medium vault like that. She would want to get a running jump up to the vault and run through it as a running vault or a sprint vault, which she's going to demonstrate right now. And I want to just mention, when you see her running, you'll start to see the red scratch marks. Remember that if you're playing Survivor, every time you run, you leave these red scratch marks all around the environment. So just be aware of when you want to be running and when you don't want to be running. And killers, always be looking around, always scan the environment for scratch marks, especially if you're having a hard time finding the survivors. So here's our running vault. And she tries to do a running vault on the back end, but ends up with a medium vault because the house is in the way, so she yells at the house. Beautiful. I'll show you how to point in a little while. You can see here, when you're going through the vault as a slow vault, it'll just say vault, okay? But if you actually run up to it, it will say running vault. So just be on the lookout for that. That's what the sound notification looks like if the killer is not within line of sight, and you can see she just jumped through that window. You can do the same thing with lockers. You can go in slow, come out slow, or you can go in fast and come out fast just by holding down the running key. However, same thing here. The killer will get a sound notification if they're out of line of sight. So you want to be careful. You want to enter these quietly if you're trying to, be on the down low. So here is an example of what yes, thank you, Bunny Fang, excellent work. Okay, so here's an example of what that sound notification looks like. You'll see all the sound notifications for killers look the same, even for cleansing a totem. So she's cleansing a totem here, which we'll learn about in a later video, what those are for and what they mean, what other interactions you can do with them. You can see the outline of lit totems if you are a killer with a hex that has a lit totem. And there you go, same sound notification when they cleanse that. So when you see these sound notifications, you won't know exactly if they've jumped through a window or cleansed a totem or failed a skill check like this, which looks exactly the same, but you know that there's a survivor there doing something. There's some kind of interaction happening. Another thing to look out for is finished gens. So when you finish a gen, they get a different notification that actually shows the picture of the generator being finished. And you'll notice for the the incomplete generators, the killers can see a red aura. So the killers can see all the generators the whole time until they're finished. Once that generator is finished, it's basically out of sight, out of mind for the killer, which I'll demonstrate here. I go up and just kind of show you what it looks like when it's finished. All the lights are on, what it sounds like. She's so cute. And then I just kind of go out and look up and show, you know, there's no more red outline of the generator there. Another great thing to be aware of both as killer and survivor is that the killer, directly in front of the killer in their direct line of sight, a couple, maybe like a meter or two in front of them, there is a red light, which we call the stain, the killer's red stain. If that red stain is on you as a survivor, you're probably about to get hit and you should try to do something fast. And then as killer, remember that that red stain can give you away. So if you're trying to trick someone about where you're going, you might want to think about walking backwards or walking sideways so that your red stain isn't kind of lighting up the path and showing all the survivors which direction you're going in. The next thing to keep in mind is the terror radius, which is that heartbeat that you hear. I'm far away, not much of a terror radius. As I get closer, you hear it get louder, and even when you're close enough to a killer, you'll get chase music on both sides. So the killer will get chase music, and the survivor will get chase music once they're close enough to actually be considered in a chase with each other. And then interrupts. So they didn't talk about this in the tutorial, but the killer can grab you out of various places and out of various tasks. So they can grab you out of a locker, which looks like this from the killer's point of view. From the survivor's point of view, you can move the camera around. So the survivors aren't really locked in the animation. I try to move my camera around here and show I can have any point of view and look around. It's really important to remember that survivors are third person point of view, so it's much easier for them to see. Killers are first person point of view, and their field of view is much more limited, so the survivors can see a lot more. So when you're playing survivor, use that to your advantage. Look around a lot. When you're on a generator, don't just be staring at the generator. Look around, look behind you. Some killers don't even have terror radiuses in certain situations, so that heartbeat isn't always going to be reliable, and you want to make sure you use your eyes, use your senses. You want to be listening, you want to be looking, and just keep that in mind. Be very aware. You want to be situationally aware in this game. You can grab them off of a generator, or be grabbed off of a generator, off of a window or a pallet. Now you can only grab someone off of a window or a pallet if they're injured. And if you want to grab someone, if you're playing the killer role, you have to do a short attack. So there's two different length attacks. You can hold your swing button down, and that's considered a lunge attack. And if you do that, you won't actually grab the survivor. But if you just push it once, nice and short and sweet, you'll grab them if you have the right timing and if they're in an interaction where you can grab them. And this keeps you from having to knock them on the ground and then pick them up. You just grab them and they're right on your shoulder. And with the exception of the windows and pallets, any other place that they grab you, they can grab you healthy. So they don't have to hit you at all. They can just grab you healthy, put you right on their shoulder, and put you right on a hook, which really saves them a lot of time and gives them a lot of pressure. So as survivors, try not to get grabbed, and as killers, try to get as many grabs or interrupts as you can. And this is from the survivor's point of view. I just kind of rotate the camera to show that you can move that camera around. Off of cleansing a totem, off of opening a chest, opening an exit gate. I love the game over sweater. It's especially pertinent right in that moment. Right there, this was hard to capture, but she's sabotaging a hook, which you can do with a toolbox, which is an item which we'll talk about in future videos, or using a perk called Saboteur, which helps you to sabotage hooks, which just means that you drop the hook so that the killer can't put anyone on it for a certain amount of time. If you're in the middle of doing that and the killer's empty-handed, they can grab you off of there. And that's what that just was. Okay, so now we're going to talk about flashlights, which is another item. We're not going to get too into like flashlight technique and timing, but just briefly kind of show this because they don't show this at all in the tutorial. They don't really get into any items at all, and flashlights are a very, very important tool on the survivor's point of view and a huge nuisance for most killers depending on what perks you're running. So here's what it looks like when you blind someone. If you get it successfully, you'll notice the flashlight beam gets really wide and then goes back back down to normal size. And you'll see on the top right corner here, it says killer blind. So you know you pulled it off, and let me show you what it looks like from the killer's point of view. When they get blinded, they're blind for a couple of seconds, so that gives you a chance to hide and get away, right? In this tutorial, the Nia just stays there and hangs out with us, but you would want to take that opportunity to get distance and break line of sight. A great time to flashlight a killer is during an animation. So the killer gets locked into animation certain times. Like here when they're breaking the pallet, they're not able to look away. As killers, you can simply avoid a flashlight blind by looking up. I like to look up. I think you can look down as well. I like to look up, whatever. You just look away from the flashlight, turn your body, and then they can't blind you. But when you're locked in an animation, like when you're breaking a pallet, you can't move your head because you're locked in there. So just be aware of that. If they're standing right there with a flashlight, you might want to do something different, or just be prepared and just know that you're probably about to get blinded. Coming through a window is another animation. I'm not a great flashlight blinder, as you can see. A lot of you who are really good at the game are probably laughing right now. Bear with me, okay? The concept remains. You can also, they only showed in the tutorial pallet saves, saving one of your friends who's on the killer's shoulder by dropping a pallet on them. Well, this is going to come in a lot more handy a lot more times, because how often is somebody right next to a pallet and ready to save you, or you go down by a pallet? But as long as someone's near you with a flashlight, they can actually save you with the flashlight like this. Again, my timing and aim is not very good, but you see he dropped her and he got stunned, just like if you stun the killer with a pallet, so she can now get away and make some distance. So here's what it looks like from the killer's point of view when you're holding someone and the flashlight save happens. So not only do you get blinded, but you can hear my killer scream, and that means that you've just gotten stunned. She makes that same scream when she gets hit with a pallet. And it just takes a few seconds to be not blind anymore and to recover from that stun. Now, the crows. So the crows come in when you've been standing still for too long, and it only happens to survivors. The same sound notification we talked about earlier in the beginning of this video, that's going to happen here. So if you're a killer, you're going to get a sound notification if someone's basically away from keyboard, AFK, they're not moving, or they're hiding too long in one spot. The game discourages you from just hiding in a corner the whole game by making crows fly around your head. You'll get up to 3 crows. In this situation, we were getting crows a little bit because we were making this video for you guys, but it gave me a good opportunity to show you that this is another thing you want to avoid. This will happen when you're laying down on the ground. If you've been knocked down on the ground as a survivor and the killer leaves you and you stay in one place long enough, you'll get crows there too. So crawl around, move around, make sure that you're not getting crows if it's been a little while. It'll happen in a locker as well. The crows will perch right on the locker and let the killer know you're in there. So be aware of that. Now let's talk about communication. You saw some pointing earlier. For keyboard, it's 1 to point, 2 to beckon. So you press the number 1 and the number 2. For PlayStation and Xbox, it's up arrow on your D-pad to point and down arrow to beckon. And these are really the only forms of communication in the game for survivors. Killers are even more limited. All they can do is really swing their weapon around and then kind of move their head and their body around. Survivors can point, beckon, and then they can also crouch to try to, and they can nod their heads, and it's really fun in this game, the amount of nonverbal communication. There's no in-game chat, so you'll learn different ways to try to communicate, get your message across with your other survivors if you're playing Survivor, or if you're a killer and you're trying to communicate with the survivors as well. So this is Abil and Ania kind of demonstrating for us the crouching, the pointing, the beckoning. They're communicating with the killer right now, which is yours truly. Beautiful bunny Legion, and then I kind of go into the shack so I can get a profile view of them, just so you can get a good view of kind of what that looks like. And they're having too much fun now. We need to shut this down. I can already tell it's gonna go, yep, okay, yep, Nia, come on. We're on YouTube, all right? Chill out. All right. You can also put your items down. When you do have an item, you put an item down by pressing R on keyboard, and then on Xbox it's B, and on PlayStation it's circle to put your item down, and it's the same button to put a survivor down. So if you're holding a survivor and you want to put them down, you can do the same thing that you see us do here with our items. So I put my flashlight down, picked it back up. Kate put her med kit down, I want that, so I put my flashlight down again, I grab the med kit, she grabs the flashlight, it's a beautiful trade, all is fair. Okay, so before I get into the picking people up and putting them down, I want to show health states. So I feel like this was glossed over in the tutorial. You probably get a lot of this. A lot of this end part is going to be probably a refresher for you guys, but just in case, this is what a healthy survivor looks. If you notice on the left, you can always see yourself and your team members and their health state. So this is what a healthy survivor looks like. And when you see her, she's not moaning, groaning, she's quiet, she's just standing there. There's no blood coming out of her or anything. So this is the healthy state. Once you get hit once, you're now injured. You'll see on the left these red scratch marks over your face. You'll hear her start to moan and groan, and you'll see blood coming out underneath her. I back up to make sure that you can see that. So you see a pile of blood. As she moves around, that blood will follow her around and trail her around. When she's actually downed, you'll see here, it shows her laying on the ground. And it's pretty obvious what she looks like. Same thing here, she will leave a blood trail if she crawls around. She's not happy that I downed her. She's upset. She's shaking her head at me, flopping her ears around. I love her. It's so funny. Okay, now this is what it looks like when you put a survivor down. Notice the wiggle progress. This is from the survivor's point of view. So you'll see the wiggle progress bar. You already know about wiggling from the tutorial, but what you might not know is if the killer puts you down and then picks you up, it will progress your wiggle bar pretty substantially. So see where the wiggle bar is there? He puts her down, he picks her back up, and now the wiggle bar has progressed pretty substantially. She continues to wiggle. He puts her down one more time. This next time he picks her up, she's gonna wiggle down. So he made that a lot easier for her. And he also gets stunned when she wiggles down. And here's the perspective from the killer. If a survivor wiggles off your shoulder, just like every other stun, a few seconds where you can't do anything, and then you have to find where the survivor went off to. Now we'll talk about hook stages. So on the first hook stage, from the killer's point of view, you'll notice over here, it's 500 points, they're hooked, and 200 points for being caught, and that's their first time on the hook. So this is being recorded Friday, November 19th, 2021. So some of this may change, the amounts of blood points and all of that, but hopefully most of this is still relevant. On this stage, the survivor doesn't have to do anything. They're just hanging out. They're just chilling. On the second hook stage, Bill does not want me to put her on the hook. On the second hook stage here, this is when she can struggle. And you'll see that for the killer, on the right, it says entity summoned. Okay, so you get the same points every time you hook somebody, but now the entity has been summoned, and now the survivor is going to have to struggle and pass skill checks if she wants to live and give enough time for her survivor buddies to come get her off the hook, which he really wants to do, and I was making him wait to do, and he's really anxious. Because Bill's a hero, you know? Alright, so he sneaks in, he gets the unhook. I don't like it. I'm downing her again. No, no, no. We're putting her back on the hook. We're killing this one. Sorry, Bill. So when we put her back on the hook, you'll see that the extra points for this, the hooked points come right away as soon as someone's on a hook. But you'll notice that it takes a few seconds until she's actually fully sacrificed to the entity. You do get points for the full sacrifice, which you'll see pop up on the top right. Right here. Sacrifice, 200 points. Great. From the survivor's point of view, here's the first hook stage. Nothing to do here, right? You're just hanging out. You're just waiting for your friends. Nothing for you to do. Slowly but surely, you will start to progress. If no one unhooks you from this first hook stage, you'll automatically go into the second stage. If nobody unhooks you from the second stage, you'll go into the third stage and you'll die, which is the sacrifice. The first stage is called the summoning stage, the second stage is the struggle stage, and then the third stage is the sacrifice stage. So here you can see these little claws of the entity starting to form, and that will happen on that first hook stage and just keep on forming until the second stage if no one unhooks you. So it's kind of like a timer. You can tell right about here, you know you're about to go into second stage. If no one's right there about to get you, you might want to take your chance to escape here. Very, very rarely in this game are you ever going to try to get yourself off of the hook on the first stage, because it's a very low probability. I think it's like 4% chance of you getting off that hook, which is a 96% chance that you just speed up the process to stage number 2, which is not good for you. It's not good for your team. On the first hook, you basically wait. Unless everyone else is downed on hooks, you know, there's only 2 people left and the other person can't get to you, then you're definitely going to want to try to get yourself off. But most of the time, probably 90% of the time, even maybe more, you're not going to try to get yourself off the hook. You're going to just sit there and wait for somebody to save you. And then in the second stage, you can no longer get yourself off of the hook. Now you just have to struggle by passing skill checks. And you'll know you're going into second stage because this will happen. You'll also notice here the little tallies next to the person's name show you how many times they've been hooked. So the first tally means they've been hooked once, second tally means they've been hooked twice, and then that means that they are now on death hook, which means the next time they get hooked, they're going to die instantly. So we really need to protect that person. You'll also see when someone's on a hook, you have the little hook icon over their face. And then finally, what happens if it's the Endgame Collapse, which means you have that timer going, the timer across the top that counts down. That happens once the hatch is closed by the killer or once an exit gate is opened by a survivor. So once that happens, it's a 3-minute timer. You'll start to see it at the top and you'll start to notice the ground starting to get kind of fiery, like lava, and you really want to get out of there before that timer counts down, because when the timer gets to 0, this happens. The entity will just take you. Whether or not the killer has ever hooked you or anything, you will die right here by the entity. Beautiful, isn't it? So I hope you enjoyed this DBD School 101 tutorial supplement. I hope it helps you, and stay tuned for future videos where we'll go more in depth on different subjects in Dead by Daylight. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This has been A Moment in Time with Taylor.